We're going to talk about how to manage your data layer with Claravine and using Google Cloud Storage. So first, the why. Within Claravine, we have templates. We can create formatted data and expand that data as well in a formatted way. So each table is basically, it's like a flat table, and we can create a key and expand data off of that key. So after discovering that, we also have outbound integrations with Google Cloud Storage being one of them, and a couple other cloud environments as well. So we can export data from Claravine to these cloud storage environments, and in a couple different file types actually. So we have an Excel file format, CSV, and more importantly for this exercise, we can export with a JSON file. So once you format data, you can send that off to a cloud environment. So why couldn't we do a dynamic data layer? Use cases for this, of course, is data layers are key for collecting clean data on your site. You can easily, through Claravine, add additional output values or even edit values. And even doing this on the analytics side, as opposed to some teams doing it with just strictly their dev team. So basically, democratize all the data, format it in a way you want. And then, of course, in this example that you'll see towards the end, we have some outlier cases where if you can't deploy through your dev team on site, you can also do this through a tag management system. So the overview of what we're going to be doing, we're going to have a JSON object created within Claravine. We're going to send that off to Google Cloud Storage. We're going to make that file public, create a data layer, and then deploy it on site. So here we have an example of what the step one looks like. So why did we choose JSON? Well, quite simply, the data layer is a JavaScript object. JSON is really easy to parse. And if we can create it, a JSON file, why not use it? So in the bottom screenshot you see, that's coming from Claravine. So I decided what my key was going to be, what kind of data, expanded data I wanted. Really think about those key value pairs of how you want your data layer to build. I will say this part, it's going to be the most time consuming. There's a lot of thought. The example you have here is basically for product data. Of course, you could do a sitemap, you could do events, really whatever data you wanted to expand. So after we have this created, you can also see on the black screenshot picture. So that is what our JSON data is going to look like. So all of our column headers within Claravine, they're assigned IDs, and then the values are each of those cell names for those for all that row data. So each row of data is structured in its own object. So from that file, we send it off to Google Cloud Storage. Cloud environments, to me, are really where we need to move to for storage purposes. It allows the data to really freely flow to many different environments. So you're not only sending this data to your analytics platform, you very well could combine these tables within, well, in our example, using Google in BigQuery, as well as maybe your data viz tool, such as Data Studio. This data becomes very movable once it hits the cloud. And Claravine has a really nice integration for an outbound file send to the cloud. Most cloud structures, again, this is Google, but even with like an S3 bucket, you start with a bucket, you have a folder, and then you can have an object. In the screenshot you see here, it's basically we sent our file. It's that product listings template on the bottom, and that's the file that we will be referencing in our next step. So once we created our JSON object, sent it off to the cloud, now we have to make that file public. We'll be referencing this file through another code block. So how we go about that, you can do this through the UI. However, within this example, I used the Google SDK. So it was a matter of just installing the GSUtil library, using a few of the GSUtil commands, making the data public. You also have to account for cross-origin sharing. If you don't, you could run this without doing it. However, you're going to see some warnings on your network request. So once you account for that, this screenshot here, you'll see that that's, I'm just saving it locally. However, you could save it in a different way, but eventually we want that 200 green dot get status recorded when we call our file. So after we created the JSON object, moved it to cloud, file is public now in the cloud. Now we have to create our data layer. So for our use case, we just called the file using an XML HTTP request. From there, once you call the file, it's just a matter of parsing that JSON object. The next block or the next code I'm running is basically a loop. I did the while loop with an if else statement. You can also see that I've already defined my key value pairs, that I have my product name, SKU, category, and basically running through that JSON file to pop that key value pair. On the second part, syntax is, again, how Google calls for their data layer. It's as well. You can make those customized too. So Adobe has their own Adobe client data layer. You could sub that here. But basically, you see I call it out as step 3. It's endless how you want to set this up. This is just really one example of how you can complete the process. So from there, you just have to deploy it on our site. A little tongue-in-cheek to go to your developers and ask them really nicely to place your data or your code block on your site. We all know our developers are busy people. Sometimes it doesn't happen as fast as you would like. So if you have a microsite or a promo page that's coming up for a day, sometimes you can't do this. Or in my previous cases, we had a lot of third-party sites. I very well couldn't send a code block and say, hey, put this on your site. But I did have my tag manager on there. So in this screenshot, you see it's Google Tag Manager. And sometimes you need to run this client side. You have an open gateway to your HTML with your tag manager, and you could very well place that in there. Is that recommended? No. Try to go through your developers first. But if you need the option, you can. The option is there that you could very well run this through your TMS. So final product, this is what we're looking at. So this is actually coming, we have a test site we use here at Claravine. And this all started with basically creating that file from Claravine. I have formatted a number of rows of data, sending that off to a cloud environment for storage. It's a JSON file, so I can easily parse it. I'm making that file public, and then create my data layer, whatever code block you need, and then deploy it on your site. You can see, clicked on the Amsterdam short sleeve travel shirt, values pop up, and then from here, then off you go. So calling these data layer variables in whatever event, or if this was a purchase, having that populate in there. Really know it's easily used, it's formatted, and off to the races. And there we go. That was the simple process in 10 minutes or less.